Hello watch enthusiasts. Today I'd like to talk about watches which would appeal to the active gentleman. So a person who will wear their watch doing sport, for example, or travel, but also will visit black tie events, dinner parties, things of that sort, which will require a slightly more formal wristwatch. And my first pick is the Breitling SuperOcean, more specifically the Heritage. Now, this watch has become rather well known for its classic looks, and its very simple and elegant design. Now, this watch comes in two sizes. It used to come in three, but there are only two now. There is, as you see on the left, the 42mm version, which has the date at the 9 o'clock position, and is available in all the same colours as the larger 46, which is on the right. Now, the 46 is interestingly my pick for this watch, even though it would look oversized on my wrist, and that's for the simple reason that the date has been moved to 6 o'clock, which makes for a much more symmetrical dial, which complements the very simple and elegant nature of the rest of the watch. Now, this watch is fully polished, so there are no brushed surfaces on this piece, meaning it has a very sophisticated look, without the more sporty and modern look of a brushed timepiece. It also is water resistant to 200 meters, which means that it can be used for swimming and diving, along with wear above sea level. The two strap versions which I would go for would be either the rubber strap or the Milanese mesh style bracelet. Now, the mesh style bracelet suits the case extremely well because it's also polished, but will probably be less practical and less comfortable than the rubber version. As you can see in this photograph, it's very high quality and matches the colour of the watch. Equally, it has a very high quality deployant, which does of course mean that it can be put on and kept at the same size. This watch does of course have a unidirectional bezel, which means that one can time things, but they haven't put any numbers on this piece, and it's only graduated at 5-minute intervals, which means that the whole bezel looks very elegant and simple and blends into the dial rather well. Now, my favourite version of this watch is the blue, because that sunburst dial catches the light wonderfully, and gives the whole watch a much more lively look. This also suits the hands, which are sword and pointer style hands, and give the whole watch a very vintage look. The movement in this watch is an ETA 2824 based movement, which has been decorated with a custom Breitling rotor and sort of perlage on the whole of the movement. Now, though this is nice to see on a movement of this type, it is a shame that for the price, Breitling weren't able to give us a higher end movement like an ETA 2892. But this movement is reliable and obviously well made by Breitling, so I wouldn't say there's anything to really complain about here. This next watch is what I tend to think of as sort of a better value Submariner. Now, this is the Rolex Sea Dweller 4000. This is the watch that sits between the Submariner and the Sea Dweller Deep Sea. This watch is quite interesting because it incorporates cutting-edge technology, so it's water resistant to 1220 meters, and has a helium release valve, but actually has a sort of a narrower lug style to the Submariner, and loses that Cyclops, making an altogether less cluttered watch. Now, I think this watch appeals to a far more active type of living than the Breitling, which is a far more dressy watch. Now, this watch does incorporate brushed and polished surfaces on that 904 stainless steel, to give this watch a more durable finish. This watch does also have graduations all the way around the bezel at minute intervals rather than the 5-minute intervals on the Submariner. Now, this I think is actually very useful to have because it means that one can judge the time using the bezel far more quickly than having to look back at the dial. and also makes the whole bezel look more symmetrical. Another nice aspect of this watch is the lume. Now this is this new very bright lume actually from Rolex, which is this blue colour. It really does give the whole watch a much more modern look to the classic Submariners and Sea Dwellers, by not having that greenish tint to the lume, but a more cool ice blue. Now something which I really appreciate about this watch is that it's lost the Cyclops over the date. And I've never been a fan of the Cyclops because I find that it makes the whole dial look unbalanced. And it's very nice to see a watch with the date that looks more like a no-date sub. Now the case size really does help this watch be more elegant, and it's still the 40mm, the classic 40mm of the Submariner, while not becoming larger like the 44mm deep sea. Also, it hasn't gained that square lug design that the new Submariners have, giving this watch a far more old-fashioned appeal, while still having all the cutting-edge technology of a modern watch. Now this watch is of course a tool watch at heart and at core, so that helium release valve is a very nice feature to have. So that's on the left-hand side of the case, and really does demonstrate what a superbly well-engineered watch this is. While still being slightly thicker than the Submariner, due to that increased water resistance and thicker case size, this watch does sit extremely comfortably on the wrist because of that raised Rolex case back, which means that most of the watch isn't in contact with the wrist, thus making it more comfortable. Equally, it doesn't protrude very far from the wrist, meaning that it can be easily worn in a suit, in a sort of a James Bond style. Now, of course, this watch houses an in-house Rolex movement, the 3135, which is a very well-known movement, which is accurate to the new +2-2 second a day chronometer bracket that Rolex operates to, which is one of the best there is, I believe the best actually. And while not being very beautifully decorated, the movement is extremely sturdy and will survive for many, many years, several lifetimes, I'm sure. Now the third watch which I'd like to suggest is the Omega Seamaster Planedocean Good Planet. And this is an interesting watch because it's, on the one hand, a hardcore diver. It's a 600-meter dive watch, but on the other hand, could be worn as a very elegant and an interesting travel watch because of that GMT function with the GMT bezel. So this watch is really an interesting piece because it's able to undertake several roles, while also having that Good Planet styling with the orange and the blue, making it very bright and colourful while still retaining its elegance. Now, whereas the Seamaster 300M is starting to become quite dated in its design, I still love it, but it is starting to become quite dated. The Planedocean may well be the way to go for very active people. Its brushed and small amounts of polishing make this watch extremely versatile, so it's able to be worn with a suit, albeit a relatively loose-cuffed suit, as it is quite a thick watch. However, the brush surfaces will make it much more robust in terms of use when one isn't at a formal occasion. Now, the difference between this and a standard GMT Seamaster Planedocean is the addition of the orange on the bezel and the main body of the GMT hand, and I think this adds a whole depth to this watch, which wasn't there in the original just simple blue Planedocean GMT. And even though some people would say that this would clash with certain colours of clothing, I disagree. I think that this watch it brings out the blue in the watch and makes the whole watch altogether more elegant than the original, less clunky. Of course, the helium release valve is still on the side of the watch, even though most people will never use it. It's a very nice touch, which I'm pleased they kept. Now, the movement in this watch is the superb Omega 8605, which is one of their 8000 line movements, which is their new generation of coaxial escapement movements. And Though it's not decorated in a classic way, it's extremely beautifully done, and a lovely feature of this is that each part of the movement is labelled. So if you look at the back, you can see where all the parts are. Now, of course, that coaxial Daniels escapement does mean that there's very, very little wear on the parts, meaning they work without lubricant. And because most causes for services is because lubricants expire over time, this is a really interesting and innovative feature to include. My final choice is the Panerai Luminor 1950. So this is the slightly more vintage version of the Luminor, and it features a more simple case design, and a more simple design altogether, meaning that it is more versatile as a watch, while still retaining those 100 meters of water resistance, meaning that one can still swim with this watch without any worries. My favourite change about this case is that rather than being blocky all the way down to the wrist, as you can see from this photograph, the edges of the case are cushion-shaped and curve downwards, meaning that it can move on the wrist and be a lot more comfortable. Now, various versions of this watch are available, including polished and brushed finishes, and GMT and standard versions, but they all retain that simple quality of Panerai, and that trademarked crown guard style, meaning that the crown can't actually be knocked, thus protecting the watch from water entry. These watches are, of course, due to their luminor naming, are fully lumed, meaning that they're very legible in the dark, while also being very elegant during the day. But these are watches that can also be worn in tough situations because they're thick lugs and sturdy crown guards. One feature which I think is very clever to include in the range is having the crown on if you select this option, on the left-hand side of the case, meaning that it won't dig into the wrist, because I know that a lot of these Panerais tend to dig into the wrist, especially the Luminor line with the larger crown guards. Now, in terms of movements, these watches do feature very nicely decorated in-house movements from Panerai, which is a really nice thing to see from Panerai when there was there have been various problems in the past involving their simply undecorated ETA movements, which caused a lot of shock. So it's very nice to see these sort of custom made movements by Panerai. And they also have some very extended power reserves, such as 5, 8, and 10-day power reserves, which really are monumental power reserves to see on these watches, and really are nice to have on a watch, so you can put it down one day and then pick it up the next to find it still running. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. This is Arm the Watch Guy. Do please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and would wish to see more in the future. So thank you very much. Over and out.